This is Savannah Evans, and you're listening to the best podcast, The Shot of Wrestling, on Spotify and everywhere else you get your podcasts.
Are you ready?
Is that the message you got? We about to go live. Are you ready to rock? So take a shot, boy. Is that the message you got? From the fans to the fans, let me hear the crowd pop. So take a shot, boy. Is that the message you got? We about to go live. Are you ready to rock? So take a shot, boy. Is that the message you got? From the fans to the fans, let me hear the crowd pop. So take a shot. Oh yeah. So take a shot. Oh, so take a shot. Oh, so take a shot.
All right, everyone, welcome to my interview segment. This is the Hollywood Assassin, your favorite actor, Mark Schwann, and I am here with a badass chick, Savannah Evans. Welcome to Shot of Wrestling.
Thanks. I didn't know I was on with a hot chat superstar from Hollywood.
What, you didn't IMDb me? You didn't Google me?
I should have. I learned my lesson.
How
Look
dare
at
you?
IMDb right now.
Good thing, actually, we have to practice social distancing, and I wouldn't normally talk to you like that, because I have to say, so the first time I entered to a BCW locker room was probably my second indie wrestling show ever, and I see you in the locker room. You're one of the first people I see. I don't think you remember this. And I was like, holy shit, this girl she could probably beat my ass. I'm sure you've gotten that quite a bit.
I mean, so it's weird, and this is probably what you're getting at too. Is like when people talk to me like outside of wrestling, like, oh my gosh, you're so nice, and then when they see me like at shows or in the ring, like, oh my god, like you're two different people. So it's always funny. It's always funny.
I mean, isn't that the whole thing in wrestling, though? Like, it's 10 times the person that you are in real life. As far as like, when you built your character in wrestling, I mean, like, how did you go about doing that?
Oh man, I'm still building it. I wouldn't even say at first, when I first started, it wasn't even a character. It was just like, hey, I'm just happy to be here. Look at me wrestle. And then you reach a certain point where you're like, nah, you got to get a little bit of depth. You can't just be like, guys, I'm happy to be here, jazz hands. So I think my character is always evolving. I feel like, I'm always like trying to work on it and trying to make it better. But right now, it's something I'm trying to make maybe more relatable to fans. When I wrestle locally, I feel like there is a relatability there just because, some of those people in the crowd like might know me or whatever. But when I go out to other places, I think like they're just hyped to see, like you said, like, oh, look at this badass. And people just want to, see something go down there. But I want to be more than just like, I'm this badass, but I want to be more than just that. So I'm always trying to look deeper at what my character can be. I don't want to be like female Brock Lesnar, but like, that's not going to work for everybody. So I'm still trying to feel it out. Right now, it's a badass that doesn't care who she's wrestling it. She wants to prove that she can take him down. She'll eat him alive. Like, man, woman, beast, alien, whatever it is.
Alien, huh?
Alien.
Is that a shot at someone that we know?
Oh, I mean, I don't know, maybe. No, I love Chris. She's awesome.
I didn't necessarily know. You brought that in there. See,
it's a hot topic right now, okay? They just saw UFOs the other day or something like that.
It is, right.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily know, I mean, if that was her just like going to another AEW event.
It was. Okay, what happened was, I think her hyperdrive broke on her UFO, so she, for that split second, was viewable to the untrained eye, I think.
Do you think it was her driving it, or do you think she had a driver?
No, I think she's a do-it-yourself type of alien. She got to get that done herself. She was, and like you said, on the way to the AEW side.
Exactly. We're going to go with that. So it's funny, Savannah, you mentioned about, talking about like a female Brock Lesnar. We hear a lot of, UFC fighters, MMA fighters transferring over to WWE and just wrestling in general. How do you feel about people from that sport coming over to wrestling, especially with someone like Ronda Rousey, with comments that she makes about, calling wrestling fake fighting?
I think that is just to get like attention on themselves, but just in general of maybe like other sport athletes coming into wrestling, it's always kind of, I guess, weird is the word. Like you can look at it as, well, this person's been playing football their whole life. Like what do they know about wrestling? Or, is that going to really translate over into wrestling? Or this Olympic swimmer, like how are they going to do in wrestling? And some people look at it from an aspect of, well, why are they popular because of this? You know what I mean? Because they didn't start out in wrestling. But I mean, that doesn't mean that there's not a spot for certain people on rosters and stuff. Like, look at Rhonda, look at Shayna. They are etching that name for themselves in wrestling after having done it in MMA. So I guess if their model isn't broken, don't fix it.
I mean, does it bother you at all, those comments like that? Or when people call wrestling fake?
Oh yeah, it always does. So my trainer is super old school, Mr. Number One George South. He instills it in you. Like anyone that calls wrestling fake, they just don't know. I think it's interesting now, though. Like you said, the Ronda Rousey comment, like they're using that to their advantage. I think with that one in WWE.
You think it's more of a work then?
I mean, I think it's a way for her to get more attention, more eyes on Ronda Rousey as she's coming back into wrestling or whatever it is that she's trying to do.
No, of course. Yeah, I personally think the same. I think Ronda Rousey, she's a smart woman, and she's a natural heel. You follow MMA.
Oh, yeah, everyone hated her.
Right, exactly. For her to come in wrestling and be like, smiling all the time, it just didn't necessarily work. Ronda Rousey's her best when she's herself. Now, did you practice MMA at all yourself or no?
No, I didn't. I've been wanting to get into, at least doing some type of martial arts for just staying in shape and, conditioning or just, something else to try that could help and benefit my wrestling career too. But I have not taken that step. I mean, I guess like baby steps. Like I've reached out to a couple people, but this year I definitely do want to incorporate that more for sure.
Now, you're talking about you have an old school trainer. There's a lot of people like legends, and I shouldn't say a lot, but there are a few like legends and old school people that have that mentality about women in wrestling. I'm sure you heard some comments maybe by Jim Cornette and Billy Graham. How do you necessarily feel about that?
Well, first of all, I want to say my trainer like always had faith in me. I know there are some places where maybe obviously like in the past girls have gone to training and they're like the only girl there and they kind of get flack from like trainers or like other wrestlers, but I never got that training. Like George always instilled like faith in me and always instilled confidence in me, and we would do shows like birthday party shows or just like training shows. Like being the only woman in those situations, he put me as the star basically.
Wow.
So he always had faith in me and in my ability as a woman in pro wrestling. I just think people nowadays are really open to women wrestling. And I'm really happy to see that a lot of fans now are super supportive of women doing their thing. Like when I go to shows, the thing that really gets me and that is like the hugest, smile on my face is when, whether I'm, good guy, bad guy, I'm at the merch table and, like little girls come up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, like that was amazing. Or like when I wrestle guys and little boys come up to the table and you kicked his ass. I'm like, yeah, I did. Don't cuss. So I think we're in the middle of an era, if you want to say, or a generation where people are way more accepting of women wrestling.
No, absolutely. I mean, women's wrestling in general has come a long way since, the whole give divas a chance. Now, did you feel like, the indies were ahead of the curve as far as that goes? Or do you think WWE was like the last to make that change?
That's actually a good question. I think with WWE, it's different for them because they are, they have like their TV deals and they have so many more eyes on them. And I think they're in a position where they have to kind of watch what content they're putting on TV. And so, for example, let's just say like intergender wrestling. WWE's kind of been like, well, we're not going to have this. So indies are kind of ahead of the curve in that aspect. Like there were a couple of WWE matches back in the day that they're like, oh, like a girl's mixing it up with the guys or whatever. But I think for the most part, they have that image to kind of protect. And so indies are ahead of that curve, I feel like. But just women wrestling in general, I don't know. I want to say WWE kind of was like, here's your Divas Revolution after people were already super interested in women's wrestling already. But it created a surge of, I think, more people agreeing, like, I do care about watching women wrestle, or, yeah, this is not just going to be my bathroom break. But I think, I don't know. Women's wrestling definitely, deserves like a bigger look. Like now, when you go to indie shows, it's not just one women's match. You'll get like two or three, or you'll get that intergender match. That people are looking forward to. So I don't know. It really just depends.
Do you enjoy working intergender matches?
I do. I really, really do. And I feel like you can learn just little things that the guys do differently than maybe some of the girls do. But I feel like I always learn something in an intergender match. I love working James Drake, the real James Drake, not the UK one. Shady Drake. I've had two matches with him, and I look back on them and I'm like, man, like I should have done this better. I should have done that better. But there's always something to learn, and he's been like a huge person for me to learn from. I definitely want a third match with him. But yeah, I love intergender wrestling.
No, you say like you learn some stuff from the guys. I mean, what's something you can learn from the guys as opposed to when you work another woman?
I don't know, like specifically particulars, but I just feel like, and of course, it doesn't go with for every girl, but the guys bring like a different like tenacity, like a different attitude, a different flavor to what they're doing. And then it's always interesting, like having that dynamic of a woman wrestling a dude. The crowd's going to automatically want to cheer for the girl. So it just seems a little more special, maybe because it's not as common as like a girl wrestling a girl. But I also feel like nowadays you are getting more and more intergender matches, and everyone has their thoughts and opinions. But I really feel like as long as it's done properly, it's fine. You can create that good art and tell that good story.
No, absolutely. I mean, we saw an Impact, Tessa Blanchard winning the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, which is a major milestone in professional wrestling in general. Do you feel like that's something that can now be more attainable in different wrestling organizations?
Yeah, I think it's the first time something like that has happened, like been televised, world champion, a female world champion. It's not the same as like another indie that doesn't have TV and they're putting like a title on, their first female competitor. Like, so that's big. That's something for women's wrestling in general, and no one can take that away from her. She'll always be, the first one. And I think that also needs to be handled delicately. Like, I think it shouldn't be a thing where 3-4 girls in a row holding the world title. Like, I think it needs to be something special. It needs to be looked at as like a big moment for a while.
Right. But now, for you as a competitor, though, I mean, does that open your eyes a bit? I mean, was that something that was even in your eye line?
Man, I was trying to get a contract first before I started thinking about being TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Man, I'm working for that contract first.
You bring up contracts. I mean, is there a preference that you would have right now? Do you watch the current product in general?
Sometimes I have not been keeping up with Impact lately. I would maybe say the thing I watch the most would probably be WWE, but I haven't really kept up a ton either. So
yeah,
but for your original question, I don't know that I have a preference on contract. I think not everyone, but a good majority of people want to be in WWE making that good WWE money. But I think there's also, as we see, like a ton of other options. Like you can go to AEW and have your own creative freedom and do your art the way you want to do it and still make, a living. You can go to Japan also, make a living. I think it depends on how you look at it. I'm trying to be out everywhere and do as much as I can.
Well, what's more important to you as far as that goes? I mean, you see someone like Matt Hardy, right? He goes to WWE. It seems like, he tried to put his creative input in there, and it just reached to a certain level, and it showed. And then the moment he goes to AEW, it just opens the doors. I mean, how important is that aspect to you?
Oof. I mean, that's tough because the kid in me obviously wants to be on WWE TV. But I think oftentimes you hear situations where, like you're saying with Matt Hardy's situation, that it's not always the best situation to have your own creative input and control over, your character and what you want to do, how you want to look, that kind of thing. So I think AEW, like I said before, is a great opportunity for people to go there and continue to have their own say in what it is they're doing.
Has AEW really changed the game that much? Because I can imagine comparing, wrestling to football players. You grow up like, a football player in Texas, right? And, the NFL is always going to be the dream. And then all of a sudden you have XFL, but NFL still got to be the dream. Is that still the case here with like wrestlers? WWE, is it still the NFL, or is AEW a good proper outlet? Does it change the way people are thinking as far as where they want to go in their dreams as far as growing up?
I think WWE is still the NFL, but I think the way that AEW kind of opened people's eyes was that they seem to have the money to, produce the shows the way they want and have everything, like I said, produced and put out the way they want, and creative control with characters and pay the wrestlers a living wage. So it becomes another viable option, I would say. They're not at the point where they're as big as WWE, but I think I was saying yesterday, it's basically like the company that you and your friends design, but you actually have the money to do it.
Yeah, it seems like, they have a good working recipe to actually compete with WWE. I think it's the first time we've seen anything like this since WCW, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you do see a lot of indie wrestlers, right? That, they do make it to AEW or WWE. It looks like more so WWE that falls into this trap where, they make a name for themselves in the indies, but then they fizzle out. What do you think happens there with that?
It depends, too, on how big of a name, how big of a star they were on the indies, how much interest there is, people are showing interest online or however it may be in that person. Because we saw the phase where people would come in, hot off the indies, and they would get a complete, like, name change and everything else. And I think that worked for some, and then it didn't work for others. But I think now to me, it seems more like they're letting people kind of keep their indie image, an indie name, and kind of let them ride off that buzz that they had on the independents. But there's always stories of the hot indie guy that got signed and then was stowed away in NXT or FCW for years, and then, either never made it to the main roster or got frustrated and quit, or made it to the main roster and it's not the same. It's not the flair that they once knew on the indies. Or you come in like AJ Styles and people are like, hey, that's AJ Styles. And, and he does his thing. And, that I think that was a good outcome for him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, AJ Styles, I think, is probably the most popular, at that point especially, the most popular indie wrestler.
That had not been under contract, yeah.
Right. Is that a fear for, for wrestlers like yourself, for in the indie world in general? Like, they get that contract and it's not what it's cracked out to be?
Yeah, I think that's why, some people like the idea of AEW over WWE, because I think there's less of that chance of, hey, we're going to tell you how to go about this character, and there's no, you know what I mean? And, like, there's no door left open to kind of, like, fizzle out because you were in NXT for a year and a half and whatever else.
Now, say you do go to WWE, right? What's like the worst possible scenario in your head as far as a gimmick?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Honestly, the worst gimmick would be like nothing. Or like, hey, you're going to be this lamp that stands in the corner, like in the background of someone else's vignette. You know what I mean? Like you're just a background character. I guess for me personally, like I'm super upbeat, but to play maybe like a Valley girl, like I know I say like every 5 seconds, but if they gave me that character, I'm like, well, how far do I go with this? Like, do I have this on-screen boyfriend that's always like, oh, I'll buy you this, and is she spoiled? Like, I don't know. I don't know that would be like, I think that's the thing I could do, but I wouldn't really feel passionate about it. Well, but I'm sure a lot of people in WWE are in that position where they were given a gimmick maybe they didn't like, but they're going to do the best they can with it. Some people got fired. Some people were like, never mind, I'm going to leave.
Right. I mean, you look at someone like The Undertaker, obviously he was given that gimmick, but, that gimmick, if it given to anybody, would have fizzled out right away. He was able to evolve that character over time. He's still a main figure today in the wrestling world.
Yep.
Now, talking about contracts, with everything that's going on right now, it's affecting businesses everywhere, including wrestling. And of course, we saw that we saw a lot of people getting released from WWE. It's still going on right now. How does that impact the indies in general? I mean, how do you necessarily feel about that when you see that?
Well, I thought about that the other day actually. Like some of these indies that maybe aren't as big as others, like do they come back from this? Will they financially be able to? But I feel like the heart of the indies is to keep going. I think eventually we'll reach a point where we will kind of come back from this. It's definitely a bummer. You just hop on Twitter, you see people like going stir crazy in their homes, and just a million tweets a day, like, man, I really want to wrestle. I really want to wrestle. So impact wise, like mentally, I think wrestling kind of has to come back.
I guess it's a matter of like, what does that look like when we do come back?
Right. Yeah, I've definitely heard all kinds of theories about, if your building can only hold 100 people, and then by regulation you can only have like 30 fans in here, or whatever the case is. Like, do we come back to that? Do we come back to where it's mandated that people wear masks at shows? Or I think it'll be interesting to see what does happen.
Are you concerned at all as far as like with wrestling possibly coming back too soon?
You'd kind of have to be crazy not to be concerned about it. Obviously people are going to want to come back, and, are we coming back too soon? That's the current question everyone's facing with, all of the shelter in place mandates are now starting to lift, or I guess in George's case has already lifted. Is it too soon? Should we wait? I don't know. I think you kind of just have to take it by baby steps for sure. Like, you do want to protect the wrestlers, you want to protect the promoters, you want to protect the fans, do what's right, what's best for them. So it is kind of crazy. Like, I personally do have an autoimmune disease, so it does make me question, how careful should I be, or how does it impact me differently, I guess, a quote unquote normally, right. Like a normal functioning person. I don't know. I think everyone should just be cautious and try to be as safe as they can be.
Say you're the promoter, right? What guidelines would you then taking place as far as what would you like to see as far as being taking place to safely run a wrestling organization post COVID-19?
I think first maybe like open air shows, like maybe go back to having outdoor shows. Maybe that way, because we're not as enclosed in one tiny area. But I honestly don't know what I would do.
COVID-19 or not, let's just make that a thing.
Exactly. Every promotion, it's mandatory.
I hope Anthony Cole is listening to this right now, BCW.
Oh, man. There is a company in South Carolina, OSCW, and every year they have a beach show, and it's the best thing ever. Like, it's so fun. They have the ring behind a bar, so it's on the sand. Like, my wrestling boots were full of sand by the end of the show, but like, so there's a balcony at the bar, upstairs and downstairs, so fans can like sit there and they can drink and watch the show. Obviously, there are chairs set up around the ring as well, and in the background is the ocean. So it's kind of like, it's really cool atmosphere. I enjoy doing it every year.
So, in a spot in the match where you're laying down the ring, are you just like, all right, let me just milk this out for everything it's worth? Taking the sun, listening to the waves.
It would be nice to sunbathe for a second, but then you remember not only the sand that's underneath you, but the canvas is on fire. Like, the ring is hot.
Oh, man.
From the sun. Like,
that's something I would never even think about.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, man. See, then you're like cringing every time like you hit the mat.
Yeah. You're hitting the mat and you get like sand grinding into your back, but also that canvas is on fire.
Ooh, so it's not as fun as we think it might be.
It's still fun. It's still a different experience.
One thing I want to touch on actually is, we were talking about social media before. You go on social media and, you see like a lot of people that talk about they miss wrestling, but we're also seeing a lot of social media challenges. Have you participated in any of those? How do you feel about that?
I don't know. Like, well, first of all, let's talk about TikTok for a second.
TikTok is like bigger than ever right now.
Yes, because everyone is at home and they're like, hey, let's hop on TikTok. I don't know. I think like that kind of took over during quarantine, but just to keep, people occupied and busy, their mind off of things. But the one challenge I did participate in was the Don't Rush challenge.
Yeah, those look a lot of fun.
I like forced myself to do it.
Did you not want to do it, or you just like, you're like, yo, come on?
Yeah, my friends were just kind of like, we're going to do this. You want to, send me your video and I'll put everyone's video together and we'll do this. So I was like, all right, cool. And then when it came down to actually making the video, I'm like, oh, like, first of all, I have not worn makeup during this whole quarantine. And I was like, man, am I going to have to put makeup on? So I, so I did for the TikTok. But it was fun, though. It ended up being really fun. Again, another way to pass time during the quarantine. Like,
Right.
we're going to create all these challenges.
Right. This would have never happened in the 90s. We were quarantined then.
Could you imagine?
No, I don't want
First
to.
of all, dial up.
AOL would suck during this.
All of that stuff would have crashed.
Oh,
There could
totally.
not have been this many people on there at one time back then.
No, and we would go nuts. We would go absolutely
Right.
nuts.
And then speaking of which, my roommate brought it up again too. Like, surprised that nothing technology like cell phone wise has kind of crashed since then, right? Because everyone's
don't
on
jinx
their
it.
phone right now because we have nothing else to do. I would assume that something would have happened.
That goes to show how strong these towers are.
I guess, man.
Let's hope it's not jinxed.
Yeah, I don't want to have just jinxed everyone and everyone's last couple of weeks of quarantine. They don't have their phones on them.
But talking about social media though, I mean, I guess that's another way to stand out as a wrestler. I know, like in my world in acting, there's a lot of artists out there, but there's people that view this as a business as well, and social media is part of the business. Do you find that trend to be the same in wrestling as far as like, social media, so much work?
So I think there's at least two sides to that conversation. The first one is, yes, social media is part of my job to network and create as much content for myself as I can, get as many eyes on me, use all the hashtags, put out my daily video or my daily pictures and interact with fans or promoters or whatever have you. And then there's also the opposite side that's like, no, because I don't want to be, maybe it's a problem. I don't want to be out of character on social media, or maybe, that's not something that I want to do. It's weird. It's a weird thing, but yes,
how do you separate that? Like, it's weird. Like I've gotten this advice before too, because like, I do act. I mean, it's a real thing. And, I have a brand manager for that. I have my whole brand and everything. But, in wrestling, my wrestling persona, has been more of a heel, and like trying to combine both, it's tough to do. How do you balance that?
Oh, I don't do it very well at all. Because like I said, there's the two sides. There's the side that's like, if I interact with these fans too much, it creates a sense of like familiarity with them, and they don't see you in a certain light maybe anymore. Like you're now their best friend instead of a superstar or something like that. But I think that works to some people's advantage. Some people that their following is so huge and it relies on the fact that they are so in tune with their fans and their audience and interacting with them and that kind of thing. So I feel like I try to balance it. I'm not going to be on social media, crying, complaining about every little thing.
No,
because first of all, you don't want to put negativity out there like
right.
that. Like, oh my God, I tried to, I don't know, make breakfast this morning and stove broke. Like, no one wants to hear about that, or no one wants to hear you complain about whatever
politics or whatever
whatever political thing is going on out there. So I just try to be mindful mostly of that, of not putting negative stuff out there, but also still kind of trying to be relatable at the same time, but not too relatable.
You don't necessarily.
It's a weird tightrope.
It totally is. I'm still trying to figure it out. Like I know my character's gradually going through a face turn, which is great for me. It makes things easier. But no, I mean it's tough to do because you don't necessarily. You see a lot of wrestlers like kind of break the kayfabe on social media, and it seems to be fine. But then you have like the old school people like, hey, never break kayfabe.
Right. I think it's also, to what you said before, I meant to touch on that. When you say, like, in acting, and you have someone that sometimes take care of that stuff for you, there's very minimal of that in wrestling. A lot of professional dudes have someone that kind of helps them handle, whether it's like their bookings or their creative content they're putting out on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is, but majority of people don't. So that's just them making their own decisions about what content they're going to put out and whatnot. So I think that also opens its own can of worms too.
No, absolutely. I'm surprised more wrestling schools don't, teach at least like, the business side of things in wrestling, including social media and marketing. Because, that's a whole other part of it as well. Even acting schools, they don't necessarily teach that. You know, those are just separate seminars that you just have to take, you know, wherever you might find it. But, you know, it's part of the business, it's part of the art.
Right. And I've definitely been to seminars where that's exactly how it's approached, where it's here's the best way to save money when you're on the road. Here's the best way to, budget your meals. Here's the best way to, whatever it may be. Like I have been seminars like that, and they're definitely very helpful. And I think everyone could benefit from stuff like that. As far as let's do a rental car instead of taking someone's actual car because the rentals are covered and stuff like that. As we just have to put down, like we just have to make sure we have our money on this down payment on this rental, just like stuff like that, or maybe things that you would never think about. I think that's very important too for kind of every wrestler to know.
Exactly, because it gives them the longevity. Because you can easily go broke in wrestling when you first start off. Especially with all the money you have to throw in as far as the merchandise you get, the ring attire, the school. You're starting off in the red. And how do you get into the black? I think that's something like not every successful wrestler or not every wrestler figures out, because the successful ones do.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
And same goes for acting or whatever art you want to insert here.
Yeah, people eventually learn what's going to work best to help them, get ahead or help them succeed. So, yeah.
Savannah, hopefully we do get out of this soon. What is something that we could look forward to seeing from you when things go back to normal? Have you been working on anything during this?
Yeah, I would definitely like to have a bunch of new merch after this. I already have one design that I like, and I kind of gave the green light to start having new merch. Like right now, I just have I have shirts and 8x10s, but I also want to have smaller items that when the kids drag their parents to the show, like, hey, mom, can we get whatever? And the parents like, sure, you can get the souvenir. But sometimes the parents aren't as willing to shell out $20 per kid, so it can turn into like, hey, maybe let's get like these stickers or these buttons or these pens. So I do want to get a lot of that kind of stuff too.
It's creative.
So I have plans for that right now.
Awesome. Well, Savannah Evans, thank you so much for joining us for Shot of Wrestling for this interview. It's been a pleasure. Where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, no, I definitely had a good time. I'm glad you guys could have me on here today. My social media is as follows. Twitter, because someone has Savannah Evans, and I'm going to see what I can do about that. Mine is Savannah Evans, the letter N, the letter V. This girl hasn't tweeted since 2011. I'm going to try to do something about that.
You need the wrestler to get that.
I do. I do.
There's only one Savannah Evans.
It's probably some old lady that forgot she made a Twitter.
It's going to be an easy win then.
Yeah, there you go. And then for Facebook and Instagram, it's Savannah Evs, just EVS, because, again, Savannah Evans was taken. So I just stuck with that. But yeah, please, interact with me, follow me. I try to post as much as possible on my Facebook, but I think what I post the most on is probably Twitter and Instagram. But yeah, I have my fan page on Facebook, and then of course I just opened up my pro wrestling tee store maybe 2 weeks ago. So both my tees are on there. Check them out. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. We can find you on TikTok as well?
Oh, no TikTok. I like that you threw that in there, though. Full circle.
Well, this has been fun. Savannah, but don't go anywhere. We're going to be going back to you for last call. But in the meantime, back to the studio.
This is Savannah Evans. Thank you for listening, but we're not done yet. Stay tuned until the end of the episode for last call.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I need to announce it's last call at the bar.
Oh. All right, guys, welcome back for last call with Savannah Evans. Savannah, are you ready?
Ready.
What was your favorite Money in the Bank cash-in moment?
Oh man, the actual cash in. Because I love the matches. Edge's first one.
So, of course, we've been under quarantine this whole time. What is the one thing you've learned during this?
I think I've learned more about myself, like how to control certain things that I'm thinking or feeling or the way that I am, I guess, maybe. Like patience. I'll say patience.
All right. Hey, that's a good one. I mean, some people are learning banana bread. You learn patience. I think patience goes a longer way than banana bread.
I don't know. Banana bread is delicious. I've definitely been cooking a lot, but maybe I'll say patience for sure.
I dig it. Who is your favorite female superstar of all time?
Of all time is Lita.
That's a good one. Now, who is your toughest opponent?
Oh. Overall toughness, Soraya Knight.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. She's a badass woman.
She beat my ass, legit.
Now, all your other opponents are listening to this like, oh, word?
Right. Oh, I'm going to top that. They could try.
What's your favorite sport outside of wrestling?
I used to be really big into MMA, like when The Ultimate Fighter got popular, like 2004-ish. But other than that, I don't really keep up with a lot of sports.
Then who's your favorite athlete outside of wrestling, of course?
George St. Pierre.
Who was your wrestling crush or current wrestling crush, whichever one you prefer?
Growing up, it was definitely The Rock.
Honestly, I mean, that's my man crush today.
Yeah, it still stands. Yeah, that crush doesn't go away.
What is your favorite TV series of all time?
Oh, that's so tough. I'm going to go with the answer that the 12-year-old me would give, and I'm going to say X-Men, the animated series.
Oh, damn, man. A lot of people just pop for that one.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That's one of those things you go, like, hear this episode back 2 years from now, and you're like, yeah, no, I still stand by that.
Classic.
What was your favorite wrestling rivalry?
Ooh, that's tough. When I first started watching, it was definitely Rock and Austin, but I think that's they're in like everyone's, I think, top 5 favorite rivalries.
I mean, if that holds true for you,
I'll say them for real. You can't top that.
You know what? Honestly, they're actually not in my favorite category.
No way.
All right. So you're stranded on an island. What are 3 things you must have?
A dog, Chinese food, and I guess a cell phone maybe might be the obvious answer.
Right. I always
I'll die out there. Let's be honest. With those items, I'll die out there. But
cell phone,
I'll have a friend, so it'll be fine.
Cell phone's always everyone's number one, but then it varies after that.
Yes.
Now, one last one, extra one. You said Chinese food. Specifically, which dish?
Orange chicken.
Hell yeah, son. All right, Savannah Evans, thank you for joining us for Last Call. Cheers to you. And we'll see you guys next week for another episode of A Shot of Wrestling.
Hey, baby, I hear the bell ringing, hip tosses and body slams. Oh, my. And maybe you seem a bit confused. Yeah, baby, but I got you pinned. Ha, 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 ha. But I don't know what to do when I see them with that golden case. They're cashing it in. Authority all in my face. What is a man to do? Good night, everybody.